and welcome to Silver Age Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review film adaptations of comics, anime, video games, and other stereotypically geeky works. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarmes.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
We watch a lot of superhero movies on this show, mostly because, we're doing geeky films, and those are the geeky films that get made. And honestly, this is the beginning of superhero films, I would say. There were a few black and white serials for Batman and Captain America, but this was the first big budget, successful, fantastic, critically acclaimed superhero film. And it took a few years for the rest of the industry to get on board, but this was the superhero film beginning.
And we are, of course, referring to Superman, the movie.
Yes, released 1978, directed by Richard Donner, starring Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, and of course, Christopher Reeve as Superman, who got third billing because he was a nobody at the time, but he did a great job.
The story picks up the Superman story that we all know and love. Jor-El is on planet Krypton. He sentences the war criminal, General Zod, to imprisonment in the Phantom Zone, and immediately afterwards warns the people of Krypton that their planet's going to be destroyed. And when they don't listen to him, he puts his infant son in a spaceship and has him shipped off to Earth, where he crash lands in the middle of Smallville, Kansas, where he is found by Ma and Pa Kent. Martha! And he is raised to hide his powers from the world until, after the death of his father, his adopted father, he decides to travel to the North Pole, where he inadvertently creates the Fortress of Solitude and goes on a 12-year journey to become the Superman that we all know and love.
And that's the first act of the film. And you described that very quickly, but that is not accurate to how the film goes. This is a very long film. I believe it's 2 hours, 20 minutes, and there was an extended cut, which was even longer, released a few years back. But the opening of this film sure does take a long time. I actually wrote it down. Superman, as Christopher Reeve, does not show up until 47 minutes into the movie. And what's more, 23 minutes is spent on Krypton, which is very interesting.
Where the story goes from there, Clark Kent, a.k.a. Kal-El, a.k.a. Superman, gets a job as a reporter at the Daily Planet, where he meets Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, all the characters we know and love. Superman comes to Metropolis, does his superhero thing, and he catches the eye of criminal mastermind Lex Luthor, and the two start thwarting each other's plots and plans, and that's essentially the plot of the first real big superhero movie.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. What I give it credit for is it's very accurate to the source material. From a story perspective, this origin is very true to Superman and the comics.
Yeah, to an extent. Speaking of the origin story, as I was saying a second ago, this origin is much more heavily focused on Jor-El than really any other version of Superman comic adaptation, whatever. Partially because, hey, Marlon Brando, big star, gotta have him be in the movie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about this movie is after Superman, goes to the Fortress of Solitude and, learns about who he is then mind-controlled by Jor-El for, 12 years, and when he emerges, he's Superman. And that's kind of interesting. It's not really the classic Superman origin. It does focus a lot heavier on Jor-El.
Well, and the reason why is because this film had a very interesting production leading up to it. The studio needed a really big name celebrity to really carry this film, and that celebrity was Marlon Brando. And Casey, you and I have seen A Streetcar Named Desire. Marlon Brando, he was an asshole in his personal life, but he arguably single-handedly revolutionized film acting, particularly in A Streetcar Named Desire. Not only was he a great actor, but he just changed the face of it. Up until that point, acting was just like theater acting. They were very exaggerated. They had a very particular way of talking. But when Marlon Brando comes on screen in A Streetcar Named Desire, the camera pans up his body and there's a big swell of music and he just acts like a real human. He doesn't theater act, he just acts realistically. And that sounds like, oh yeah, who gives a shit? Who cares about that? Like, that's pretty typical. At the time, that was revolutionary. This man changed the face of acting, and they really needed him to be their big, huge celebrity in this film. The thing about this movie is he took the studio to the fucking bank and cleaned them out.
This was a very expensive film. Not just because they had Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman in it, but just the special effects, which we'll get into later, are one of this film's highlights. This film cost $55 million in 1970s money. This film, when it came out, was the absolute most expensive film that had ever been made, and it's a good thing it made all the money back.
Oh, yeah.
Also, side note, do you know what the current record for the most expensive film ever is?
My gut tells me it's like Avatar, but I don't know.
Oh, it's Pirates of the Caribbean 4 on Stranger Ties.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did hear that.
For some reason.
Isn't that the shittiest one, though?
Yeah.
But the thing about Marlon Brando in this film is they wanted him so badly, and he knew that. They approached him to do this film, and he said, in order for me to read this script, to consider doing this film, I want $100,000. And they fucking gave it to him. He asked for $100,000 just to consider, just to read the script. That's a lot of fucking money. And the studio was willing to throw all that out, give that to him, because they really wanted him that badly. And not just that, but when he agreed to do the movie, not only did he get top billing above Superman and Lex Luthor for a part that he's not really in this movie that much. Not only does he get top billing over everyone else, but in his negotiation, it was in his contract that he was going to receive 11% of the box office returns. 11%. Just to keep in mind, the filmmakers of Avengers Endgame, Joe and Anthony Russo, they got roughly 2%. They were the filmmakers. They got 2%. This is a side actor who's in a couple minutes, and he was getting 11%. Yeah, you're right. They really focus on Jor-El and his origin. But when you're shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars and giving 11% of the box office to the actor playing him, yeah, you're going to give him a little bit more focus than you normally would.
Although Marlon Brando obviously was the draw to get people into the movie, and I mean, he does a good job.
Oh, yeah.
He was Marlon Brando. The real star of this film is the film's real star, Christopher Reeve, who is just amazing as Superman. I love Christopher Reeve's Superman. He's so good at capturing this wholesome, kind of comedic, but always friendly hero. Superman is supposed to be this icon, this symbol of hope and justice that people look up to. And that is what Christopher Reeve's Superman embodies.
It's crazy to see him because he can switch on like the magnetic, confident, charming Superman character and then immediately cut to the awkward, silly, bumbling, but still lovable Clark Kent. And he does both of them very, very well. And yeah, sometimes to comedic effect, but also he plays a hero, and he is a hero. And that's what this film really does get right with Superman.
And honestly, the best part of this film is just seeing Christopher Reeve as Superman being a hero. Like, it takes about an hour for Superman to finally start superheroing, but when he does, we get this montage of him just being heroic. His first thing he does is save Lois and a helicopter from falling to their death. He stops a jewel heist. He stops some smugglers by picking up their boat and placing it in front of a police station. He gives us the iconic, it's been replicated in pretty much every Superman adaptation since, the iconic Superman holding up a crashing plane. It is just wonderful seeing this great actor just portray this really, really optimistic, heroic man. And we do get later in the film another montage of this after Lex separates California from the Union, which we'll get into. just Superman flying around saving people. And that is the film's greatest strength. It is a good movie about a superhero.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. The greatest strength this film has, it's a Superman story. Seeing Superman as a hero, doing his thing, being the hero. I did really enjoy this film, but I do think there are a number of flaws that I have with it. And the greatest strength is how it is as a Superman story and as a superhero tale. However, I do feel the origin story part of it is a little sloppy.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Right. The film opens up with this really intriguing opening. It's a movie theater, but also like a comic panel that's the camera's like panning around it. And the little boy is narrating it, talking about how the Daily Planet and how amazing it is and how people look for it to the truth. And then immediately from that, it cuts to a long-ass title sequence. Really long credits. It's like 5 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot.
I mean, it's an old movie.
Right.
They all
But
had that.
Still, 5 minutes? Like, that's a third of Anthony Hopkins' screen time in A Silence of the Lambs. I just think it's funny. I mean, but, you know, what makes up for that is the iconic theme for this song.
Oh god, the John Williams Superman theme. Dun 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 dun.
Everybody knows
Dun,
this
dun,
theme,
dun,
and everybody
dun, dun,
loves
dun,
it because it's so iconic and synonymous with Superman the character. The music and even the sound design of this film, I was wearing headphones watching it. I thought the sound design and the music was top notch in this film. It still holds up to this day. Point is, it starts up talking about how great the Daily Planet is. Then it cuts to a long montage. Then it cuts to an alien planet where war criminals are on trial. That's pretty different. Like, we don't see the Daily Planet again for a long time. I get it. I understand it as a Superman fan and as someone who obviously knows Superman's origin. It's just, it was a little strange because it cuts from, this is what the Daily Planet is. Oh, and here's something completely unrelated for the next 40 minutes. And it's an alien planet and aliens, and then there's a montage of when Jor-El sends Kal-El in the ship to Earth. 3 years pass when he's in the ship, which is interesting when I think of, because they actually utilize like the theory of relativity in it, because when you're traveling fast enough, time affects you differently. But to think of Superman being in that pod for 3 years as opposed to just being in there like just a little bit because he's traveling so fast, that was interesting. Not bad necessarily, not bad at all. It's just that was interesting to see. His family finds him, and then it immediately cuts to him as an 18-year-old. And then he's like, he feels drawn to the North Pole. And then when the Fortress of Solitude is created, 12 years pass. That's when we get the story. And all that, it bounces around from place to place, from time to time a lot. It's a lot of important backstory, but the other thing too is that's the first third of the movie. That's a huge chunk of an already very long film. That's like 50 minutes what just happened. And it's like when his dad died, I understand like, yeah, that's important to him, but I didn't really have much attachment to it because this is the second scene this guy's in and he's like a completely different character than the last time we saw him. The first third of it was pretty sloppy because it just bounced around a lot.
Yeah, it is a bit awkward from a pacing perspective. Really, I don't like the first third that much either because of what it does to Superman's backstory, because there's just some minor changes that I don't really like. Props to this film, like, Krypton looks amazing is so alien, and its destruction is very well done.
Yes.
But I wish that the film focused more on Superman as a teenager with Jonathan and Martha Kent and him figuring out what type of man he wants to be than on Jor-El's backstory.
Sort of him, like, struggling with his identity and his abilities, you know?
Yeah, him deciding that he wants to use his power and be a hero. And honestly, this is probably saying more about me than the film. I vastly prefer when Superman stories focus on Smallville than when they focus on Krypton. Like, nature versus nurture, yada yada yada. I like the idea that Superman is such a good, human, kind man because he is. He grew up on Earth with kind people who taught him to be a good person. He's not a Jesus analog, which this film very much makes him. He's just a man trying to do what's right. He's an ordinary person with godlike power trying to be a hero.
And we really don't get much of that
No.
especially not from the origin. It explains the origin of him, like what's happening, but it doesn't really give you much of a reason to care, you know?
And the big problem, the biggest fault of this film, I do not like the Jor-El 12 years of mind control, and that's why he becomes Superman.
Yeah.
I like Superman being his own person and making his own choices to become a hero, rather than just being this machine that Jor-El made as he was dying because, oh, it would be cool if I had this person on Earth doing what I wanted. Like, no, I want Superman to be Superman, not a thing that Jor-El made.
Yeah, I thought that 12 years will pass on Earth's time. That whole part, I was like, that's really weird, and it's kind of rushing the story. So I think we're in agreement. The first third of it is kind of jumping around. It doesn't really give you much of a reason to care, but what this film does best is telling a Superman story after that first third, which I do feel like they do a strong job at doing.
After Superman becomes Superman and saves a whole bunch of people, we get to see him start to pursue a romance with reporter Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder. We get this famous scene of the two flying together, which is honestly kind of weird because while they're flying, Lois just narrates her thoughts, which all rhyme because originally it was going to be a musical number, but whatever. Also, the scene implies that Superman can read minds.
Here's the thing about Superman's powers, is in the Golden Age, Superman's thing was he could literally do anything. He was the Superman because he had all the superpowers. He had the typical powers that we know, like flight, super strength, invulnerability, laser eyes, which I don't believe he does in this film, actually.
Does he?
No. I don't think he does.
No, crap, you're right. He doesn't have heat vision.
Yeah, but...
He has X-ray vision, but not heat vision.
Yes, X-ray vision, freeze breath. But Golden Age Superman, from what I understand, he can literally do anything. He has psychic powers. He has wall rebuilding powers, as we saw later in this franchise.
Yeah, the rebuild Great Wall of China vision, my favorite Superman power.
Of course. There was even a power. I don't know who the hell thought this was a good idea, but they call it, I'm quoting the comics here, I don't mean to offend anybody, but they call it the midget making power.
Oh god, I forgot about that. Wasn't that like an issue where he gained the ability to shoot a tiny Superman out of his finger?
Yeah, he's like, ooh, the criminal's getting away. I would use my midget making power to create a smaller version of myself to go after the criminals while I rescue the day. And the bystanders are like, oh my god, what is he doing? Oh, look at that little Superman. He's so cute in his little tights. And Superman in his head is like, this thing is not cute. It's not even human. And it's like, dude, oh, goddamn 50s. So the point is, it was hard to pin down what exactly his powers were limited to. Nowadays, they clearly define more so what his abilities are and limit it to certain powers as opposed to just, oh, he has everything.
And I will give this film credit, unlike some other Superman movies starring Christopher Reeves, it is pretty consistent with just the speed, strength, flight, invincibility, X-ray vision.
Yeah.
And maybe mind reading in that one scene.
Although, I will say this, it's like he's strong enough to lift basically an entire state from sinking into the ocean, but he's not fast enough to stop both bombs.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and we're hinting at the climax, which we'll get to.
There were parts of this film where I was just like, okay, why is this happening? It's never really explained why. Like the fact that he feels drawn to go to the North Pole for just out of nowhere. I kind of get the idea. It's like, because it has to happen, so suck it up and shut the fuck up, basically. Whether or not that's your cup of tea, then this film is for you. You mentioned it earlier. The special effects, I thought were, for the most part, really solid. There were a few janky things, like that part at the beginning where he's running past the train. It was done as practically as possible, but good God, does it look fake as shit.
To be fair, for 1978 special effects,
Oh, yeah.
it really looks like a man is flying. And
Oh yeah,
props to this film.
Yeah, for the most part, most of him flying is done very convincingly. And it does, in my opinion, for the most part, hold up today. Yeah, sure, it could be better by today's standards, but it's still pretty solid for the most part. There's a few shots where I'm like, okay, yep, that's a product of the time. But yeah, a lot of the flying scenes, it's like, damn, that's really good. What do you think of Margot Kidder as Lois Lane?
She's alright. I mean, she's Silver Age Lois, who's a bit crazy. I mean, not as bad as she is in Superman 2, but still, but yeah, she's fine.
Yeah, here's what I think. I think she did a good job as, like, this independent, strong female reporter. I think she did a good job at that. My problem with her is I don't believe her as a love interest for Superman.
Alright.
Admittedly, it's not completely on her. Some of it's on the script as well. The first half of her screen times, like, she's written to be this very strong, more, I don't want to say selfish, but like more self-centered in a good way. Like, she's very positive about herself and she knows what she wants and she goes after it. She does that well. It's just at a point she does kind of become this sort of helpless woman needing to be saved. And that's a script fault, but my big issue with it is I feel like Christopher Reeve, we mentioned it earlier, Christopher Reeve does a fantastic job as Superman. He brings the heroism, but also the likability and the charm to playing both sides of Clark Kent. Christopher Reeve, he's very charming, fun, likable, lovable guy, attractive man. And he's so crazy about this woman, Lois Lane, and as she's portrayed by Margot Kidder, I just don't understand why he's attracted to this woman. I'm not trying to sound misogynistic at all. I don't know, I just don't believe her as a romantic interest. I believed her as this really great at her job reporter. She's like, oh yeah, I'm writing about sex and rape and murder and blood and crime and all that, like, and she's kind of blowing off Clark. I don't really understand why Clark is like, oh yeah, I'm fucking in love with her. I'm crazy about her. I just don't understand. I don't believe her as a romantic interest. The interesting thing is my mom actually is a huge fan of this film ever since she was a girl. She always watched this movie as a kid, and she was a big fan of this one and the sequel. Her and I have talked about it. She says she always hated Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. She just did not like her.
Fair enough. Like, I get what you're saying. That
Right.
Superman really does latch onto Lois really early in this film after they have, like, 2 scenes together.
Yeah, and she's kind of a dick to him throughout it.
Maybe he's into that.
Yeah, maybe. Probably. And I do think as a reporter and as an independent woman, she's good at that, but then she becomes like a damsel in distress, and that's not her fault, that's the script's fault. But all the while, I just don't understand why this very charming, handsome man is going after this woman, because I don't think she brings the same energy to it, and therefore I just don't really believe it. That's my problem. That's my problem with her.
So we've talked about Superman, we've talked about Jor-El, we've talked about Lois Lane. I feel like the next thing we should talk about is the world's greatest criminal mastermind, Silver Age Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman.
Oh boy,
who is
yes.
just hamming it up in every scene he is in.
He knows what this movie is, and he's just having a good time, and he fits really well into this.
And he may feel a bit weird to modern audiences, because he is nothing like modern-day Lex Luthor, but for Silver Age, when this film came up, he isn't too inaccurate. Like, modern-day Lex is a serious, intelligent businessman. Lex used to be just like a mad scientist who hated Superman.
Gene Hackman did do a good job. He's not in it for a long time. Like, his first scene is like an hour into this film, and then he's gone for another really long period of time. Throughout the last, like, hour or so, he's in it a lot more, but, like, the first 2/3 of the movie, he's not even really in it that much. But when he is doing a really great job.
Let's talk about Lex's plan for a minute.
Let's talk about it.
Lex Luthor's brilliant plan in this film is to launch a nuke at the San Andreas Fault to split California off, so all of the desert land that he owns will become super valuable. So many things wrong with that plan.
Right.
Number 1, the 500 or whatever megaton bomb that he launches is not big enough to destroy the San Andreas Fault. Number two, coastline property isn't just valuable because it's by an ocean, it's also valuable because, there are people who live there. Number three, holy shit, Lex. The US government, and really every government, and Superman would come down on him like the hammer of God if he killed tens of millions of people to make real estate money. And number four, wouldn't the land all become radiated because he nuked it? Also, it wouldn't be worn down into beaches by erosion. It would be craggy desert. And also, there wouldn't be people here. And also, again, he would go to jail immediately.
And again, like I said, Gene Hackman knew what this movie was, and he played the role accordingly. He just hams it up and has a good time.
And it's a dumb plan, but Gene Hackman's pure, over-the-top, arrogant asshole energy manages to sell it.
Exactly. Speaking of his plan, I noticed throughout this series in particular, Lex Luthor's whole goal is real estate, essentially.
Yeah, and evil real estate billionaire. That's a realistic villain, but they aren't evil in real life because they try and nuke California to make beachfront property.
To my understanding of Lex Luthor, I could be wrong, but I don't really think of Lex Luthor as being a real estate guy, He's more of like...
a tech guy, because he's a brilliant inventor. He built a suit of power armor to fight Superman, which, by the way, I do like Gene Hackman in this. Would be cool if he actually did some cool invention stuff.
Yeah. It is very bizarre and very scientifically inaccurate, but it's also not even really true to Lex Luthor's character.
Yeah. It's also notable that the only reason Superman becomes involved in his plan is because Lex Luthor specifically calls Superman and explains his plan to Superman.
Yeah.
Which is him being a dumbass, and I'd like to make fun of it, but that is accurate to Lex Luthor, because in the comics, half his evil shit is just being evil to piss off Superman because he hates Superman, and hates the very idea that someone could be better than him.
That's what I love about Lex Luthor. The thing about DC villains is the heroes have huge, really interesting motives against their archenemies. Batman and the Joker, they don't have really much personal going on. They just hate each other. Joker just does what he does because he enjoys it, and Batman does what he does because he has to. When it comes to one of my favorite hero-villain duos in the DC universe, Flash and Reverse Flash, it's almost completely personal. Like, the Reverse Flash does what he does because he genuinely wants the Flash to be the best version of the Flash he can be. Lex Luthor, the reason why he hates Superman, it's very nuanced and it's very character-driven. He just genuinely doesn't want people to be better than him. I know in the original origin of Lex Luthor in the comics is he was a mad scientist working with chemicals. His laboratory caught fire and Superman saved him by using his freeze breath, but the freeze breath blew some chemicals onto Lex Luthor that made him go bald. And he's like, "You took my hair from me, now I'm gonna devote my life to killing you." That's the original origin, but arguably the much better, more updated version of it is he has just this innate desire to prove that he is better than everyone, and here comes Superman, who's literally better at everything, and he's trying desperately to battle against him because of that. There's a line in this film where when he's talking to Superman over the psychic link or whatever, and when he explains his plan, he says something to the effect of, "No one's perfect. Well, almost no one." That is Lex Luthor right there.
Accompanying Lex in this film are his pair of idiot minions, Otis and Miss Tessmacher, who are mostly used as comic relief and for Lex to berate, and they're mildly amusing.
That's the thing about this film is it has a lot of goofy moments. It's a bit more silly, which is understandable because at the time comic books had only ever really been child fare, and this is kind of more of a family movie, despite the fact that it does go to some dark places. Like, Lex Luthor commits murder on screen.
Lex is brutal in this film.
Yeah.
His introduction is him, like, using a trap to push a guy in front of a train. And, like, at the climax of this film, after he gets kryptonite through some very, very dumb, convoluted ways...
That's another thing.
He puts the kryptonite on a chain, wraps it around Superman's neck, and just chucks Superman into a pool of water so he can drown. And it is brutal.
Yeah. You mentioned it there. How the hell did he figure out that kryptonite is Superman's weakness?
Well, it's simple. Superman is like 30, so Krypton blew up in the 1940s, even though they said it blew up thousands of years ago through time dilation. And because kryptonite is from Krypton, Superman's weak to it because, like, same planet, and also... obviously, that planet that blew up in a different galaxy would have a meteor sent to Earth that would be radioactive, and then Lex sees that there's a radioactive meteor, and he's like, oh, it must be from Krypton, the planet Superman's from. And then he steals it.
Stupid. Stupid. That is so quick and so stupid. But the other thing, too, is, doesn't he kill everyone in that museum there? Because they said, like, right before, what's his name? His boss...
Perry White
calls him to his office to talk to him. When he gets the call from Lex Luthor, his boss tells him, he's like, yeah, these people came into and stole a meteorite and killed everybody. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
Yeah, Lex kills a lot of people in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, if he sank all of California, he would kill, like, 40 million people, so, I mean, you got that. You know what? Say what you will about the Zack Snyder Superman movies. They do give a more convincing backstory for Kryptonite.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing they do better than this film.
Yeah. Speaking of dark moments, one moment that really stood out to me that was really funny in, like, a messed up kind of way. The montage where he's saving people and he rescues a cat from a tree and gives it to the little girl. Now, that is very true to Superman's character. That's what I love about the character of Superman, is like he will always go out of his way to do the right thing, no matter how insignificant. He saves a cat from a tree and gives it to a little girl. Superman flies away, and we get a continuation of the scene where she goes inside and goes, Mom, the cat was in a tree, but this man in a blue suit and a red cape flew down from the sky and saved him for me. And the mom goes, what did I tell you about lying? And smacks her daughter in the face.
Yeah, that's...
What?
I mean, the film was made in the
Why
70s. Child abuse standards have changed. But, like, Soups, you missed something. You missed a crime.
It was so funny, because it was off screen, too. She walks into the house, and you hear all of that off screen. But it's like, you could have cut that out, but they kept it in, and it's so funny. A mom actively slaps her child in the face.
For saying Superman exists.
Can you imagine, like, those newspapers that come out literally the next day? Like, oh, honey, I slapped you in the face yesterday.
After Lex almost drowns Superman, he launches a nuke, sinks San Andreas fault line, and then the climax, not a fight, it's just Superman going around the desert, saving people. He picks up the state of California and pushes it back. He stops a flooding dam. He saves Jimmy Olsen from falling to his death. He acts as a set of train tracks, and it's great. Again, this film is best when it's Clark Kent going around being a hero.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, he misses saving one person. Oops, Lois died. And we get this great scene of Christopher Reeve just breaking down and screaming at the sky. And then he flies up, and we get the most infamous part of this movie, Superman flying around the Earth a bunch to go back in time, or as some people have interpreted the scene, Superman flying around the Earth so fast that the Earth turns backwards, which reverses time.
Yep, and he manages to save Lois Lane. After talking with her and Jimmy Olsen, he takes Lex Luthor and his henchman to jail, where Lex Luthor rips off his wig and reveals that he is the greatest criminal mastermind of the world. And the policemen thank him, and he flies off, and we get the iconic shot, Superman flying over the Earth, and that's the end of the movie.
What is your opinion on flying so fast that the Earth's rotation reverses and he goes back in time?
It's a shitty and convenient storytelling device, and doesn't have any basis in reality. Which Superman, let's be real, Superman is not in reality at all, but this is just cheap, honestly. It's just cheap and shitty.
I grappled with this. I couldn't decide whether or not I liked it or hated it, and I will admit it's cheesy, but I mean, it's Silver Age. It's supposed to be cheesy.
Right.
I don't know if it's executed as well as it could have been, but I do like the concept behind the ending. Because, like, at the start of the film, Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack in front of Clark, and he's like, even with all my power, I can't save everyone. And at the end, Lois dies, and he couldn't save her, and then he decides, no, I'm Superman, I am going to save her because that is what I do. And he flies into the sky, and we get clouds of Jonathan Kent and Jor-El, like, yelling at him. Jor-El saying, don't interfere in history. And Jonathan Kent saying, you were sent to this Earth for a reason. And Superman chooses to use his power to save Lois because he's Superman, and he can, and he is a symbol for hope, and he is the superhero.
And he's just conveniently had this power the entire film.
Oh yeah, it comes off nowhere. It's, like I said, it's sloppy, but I do like it from a thematic perspective.
I mean, I get your point. Personally, I thought it was a little cheap and lazy, but at the same time, it's also kind of, like you said, true to Silver Age comics Superman. One thing I think that we need to keep in mind for this film, as a standalone movie, it has flaws. But the fact of the matter is, this was never intended to be a standalone film.
Yeah, it was filmed simultaneously with its own sequel,
right.
Superman 2, which is why the weird opening that focuses on Zod a lot, even though he doesn't show up again, that's why it's in it, because it's supposed to be a duology with Superman 2.
2 films, 1 epic story. It does feel like a part 1 that needs a part 2. But the problem is that, and we'll definitely get more into this when we review Superman 2 sometime down the road. I know you and I have talked about it. You're not the biggest fan of Superman 2.
Again, we'll get into it when we get to it. There are a lot of good things in it. Zod's a great villain. We still have Superman being Superman, but there's a lot of just random shit that comes out of nowhere relating to Superman's powers. And also, it has Lois Lane being absolutely insane and evil. And we'll get into it
Right,
later.
but the thing about it is, the producer who was spearheading this film, he was also going to do the exact same thing with the sequel. Like, he was the one who's like, no, we're going to make Superman 2, and it was going to be a direct continuation. It was going to be one story. The reason why it doesn't work as well is because that guy got fired for creative differences, and they got a new creative team, new director, like halfway through filming, and he filmed over half the film in order to ensure that he himself was the credited director. The problem with Superman 2 is that it's literally a hodgepodge of 2 separate creative minds' visions for what this film is going to be.
Oh god, I just realized Justice League is Superman 2! Release the Donner cut! HBO, please! Actually, there is already a Donner cut. But oh god, they did it again! Why, Warner Brothers?
Because they don't learn from their mistakes. But the point is, some of the flaws I have, like the fact that it does bounce around at the beginning. Like, we see General Zod and his henchmen, but they never come up again later in the film. But that was because they were never intended to. They were intended to enter into this sequel, which was going to be a very natural continuation of the story, but due to production issues, it wasn't as natural, as cohesive as it had originally intended to be. Another problem is, yes, Superman as Superman does really work, but it's like, we don't really get much character development with, like, how this is affecting the man, Clark Kent. I've seen most of the sequel. It's been a while since I have, but the sequel does continue on that path. Like, does Superman owe the world? And if so, how much does he supposed to give? What is the point of being a hero if you can't get what you want and what you love? Well, the sequel does continue that, but as I said, had they not fired the original producer, they probably would have had a much more natural continuation of it, more cohesive vision for what it was going to be. The point is, it's far from a perfect movie. It's iconic. It's a staple of cinema, not just the superhero genre, but cinema as a whole. It has groundbreaking special effects, outstanding music and sound design, really solid performances. But, I feel like some of the writing was a little campy. The first act really bounces around a lot, and it just feels like there were stuff brought up and not continued with the intent on it making sequels. But as a standalone film, it's kind of like you're kind of wasting time at this point, So I do have flaws with it. As a standalone film, in the context of the sequels, some of those flaws do make sense. But still, as a standalone film, it doesn't 100% work.
Yeah.
They were originally planning on filming this movie this is just a fun fact. They were originally planning on filming this movie in Europe because it's very expensive to film a movie in the United States. That's why a lot of production nowadays goes to like Toronto and Canada. A lot of it does stay in the United States, but you hear a lot of like Canada and especially at this time, Europe. They filmed a lot of movies in Europe because it was a lot cheaper. They were originally going to film in England, but the original director they had hired to film this movie, he had fled England on tax evasion charges. So he couldn't go back to England without facing legal action against him.
Seriously? Oh, that's so dumb.
It gets worse. It gets worse. Then they were like, okay, so if we can't film in England, then we'll go to Italy. The problem is, Marlon Brando had fled Italy on sexual assault charges.
Ew, that's funny.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, Marlon Brando was a piece of shit in his personal life.
Oh God, yeah.
The guy's talented, but again, you can be good at your job and be a piece of shit.
And honestly, he wasn't good at his job. He was a good actor, but the other stuff in the job, like obeying directors and memorizing lines and showing up on time, kind of wasn't good at that. And also had to flee Italy after... Jesus fuck.
Essentially, last minute, they had to find a new director because they're like, we need Marlon Brando. So, weighing the options, we're getting a new director to film in England. That's what happened in this production. It's fucked, but it's a fun fact. Christopher Reeve did a great job. Rest in peace. He was in a horse riding accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down, and he died in the early 2000s. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Margot Kidder. She also passed away. Marlon Brando also died, but, who kind of gives a fuck about him? We've already established he's a douchebag, piece of shit.
Yeah, that's the thing about old movies. You watch them and everyone's dead.
Except Gene Hackman.
And eventually there will come a day where we watch recent movies and have to grapple with the fact that all of our favorite actors are dead. But we don't have to do that yet because we're young. And eventually, maybe someone will listen to this podcast after we're dead.
Yeah, probably. Hopefully.
Nah, the world will end before I die.
Yeah, I kind of want to see it, to be honest. I kind of want to see how the world's going to end. I want to blow up like Krypton.
We've got a bit off topic. Riley, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this film?
Well, this film is an absolute classic. There's no denying that. This is the first big-budget Hollywood adaptation of a superhero film that started an entire genre. Sure, it took a few years to get the genre going, but this film has really solid acting all around. It has great special effects, outstanding, iconic music, and overall, it has a lot of strengths. But at the same time, some of the script elements aren't too solid. I have a few issues with some of the portrayals of the characters, but overall, I'm probably gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, this film is fantastic. It may have some pacing problems and a slow beginning, and Don't like the Superman mind control stuff, but it is a Superman movie, probably more than any other live-action Superman movie.
Yeah.
The scenes of him going through the city saving people alone are enough for me to give this movie a 9.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, it's an epic. It is an epic about Superman, and it nails Superman.
Absolutely.
Even if it doesn't nail everything else. I think that will be a good place to stop for today. Riley, where can they find you?
You can all find me on TikTok and Instagram at Riley James Thorpe. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Riley Thorpe. I feel a little weird plugging TikTok as the first one, but then you realize it's the one I'm most popular on, so...
I hope TikTok doesn't get banned before this episode comes out, because then that's going to be weird.
I really hope so, too. Because without TikTok, I'm nothing. That's a lie. I'm everything.
You can find me on Twitter at Jarmes Casey, JarmesCasey. Also check out The First Mag Train Out of Cleveland and other short stories, available now on Amazon. We'll be back next week, assuming we don't get mind-controlled by Jor-El for 12 years.
Or thrown into the Phantom Zone.
Well, the Phantom Zone getting trapped in there is fine, because we can just come back for the sequel.
Yeah, that's true.
Next episode, we'll be talking about the absolute lamest comic book superheroes and supervillains. As always, I'm Casey Jarmes.
And I am Riley Thorpe.
And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it. Especially not to a ladder.